Okay, you're on.
Welcome
How do I get
to
the
our
phone?
conversation number 11 with Victor Niederhoffer. While Victor is uploading the chart, we'd like to wish you all Merry Christmas and hope that you all have fun celebrating with your friends and family. I know that I'm looking forward to it. And I'm also looking forward to a break from the market. And I'm glad that S&P 500 is not trading 24/7 like Bitcoin and crypto.
They're intentionally small because you're
holiday.
sharing the chart. When you stop sharing the chart, your faces will be big again.
So the chart is up, and shall we continue, Victor?
All right.
All right. Today was a short trading day before the holidays, and it was only a 16-point trading range, which interestingly basically only traded within that 20-point drop that has occurred last day before the close. And not much really happening. I think the Brexit deal finally was passed, but I'm not sure why anybody still cares. It's been going on for so long. Anyway, Victor, what do you think about today's market action?
It was a perfect market for the infrastructure because no matter what a trader did, he paid a tremendous amount of VIG. For every half hour until the close, for about 20 half hours in a row, the market was 26.85 to 26.87. So the total range for 20 hours was 2 points. You have to give up a half a point to make a trade. So the VIG was, the rate, the house take was 12%. And then at the last minute, the market had a rally from 87 to 92 or 95.
Right.
So again, the only way to make money was buy and hold, as usual, which is a theme of the last 100 years, and perhaps certainly the last year. Now, I've read a tremendous number of articles about seasonality.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the articles are talking about a Santa Claus rally, but it's hard to say something statistically significant about the seasonality. If you look at it if you look at the last 10 years, it's different than if you look at the last 20 years or 30 years. But the theme seems to be what the numbers show is that if December is a good month, then January will be a very good month. On the 3 occasions that December was a bad month, I went down from November 30th to the end of December. The market went down about 3 or 4% in the next several weeks. But when December was a good month, the market went up its usual 2 or 3%. So that's the good news. Of course, December so far is up about 2%. However, the one caveat is that when December until we have exactly 5 trading days left,
Mhm.
when December has been very good until the 5th trading day, the market's very bearish. So it's going to be a fight as to whether the market can hold its game. If it can't, we can expect a disaster. If it can, we can expect clear sailing to the end of the year. I don't see anything bullish from the 5th trading day to the end of the month. It looks like the next day should be good, i.e. the 4th trading day from the end of the month. But after that, it's bearish to neutral. So, we're very close to the round number of 3,700. We're very close to the all-time high of 3,705. I would think that in accord with the constructal theory of Dr. Bijan, that we will break the all-time high at some time. Then I wouldn't be surprised to see a little dip. So that's it for the seasonality. There was no opportunity to make a profit today except buy and hold,
Yep.
as usual. I've been thinking about the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of what we have to say is related to the political news of the day. And there was some very bad political news of the day. Now, the chances that the R's will win in Georgia has gone down to 66%. It's now only 2 out of 3 that the R's will win the Senate. If we don't, if the D's win, we can expect an unprecedented disaster. I think all the ideas that the woke is very good for the market will go out the window. And I've been displeased that so much of what we have to say is political, because I know there are a lot of would-be listeners who are completely opposite to our thinking as far as politics goes. And certainly they're part of the market. They have to be taken into consideration. However, I can't help but think of all the factors that could have been different that would have allowed the incumbent to win. The Brexit deal is one of them. The fact that they were able to come up with a Brexit deal. The reason they couldn't before is they didn't want to do it before the election. They didn't want to give the Republicans a boost. I see Dr. Fauci has become the man of the year. They called Dr. Fauci they're having a Dr. Fauci Day in Washington, D.C. He's been such a difficult and partisan for the Democrats. It's amazing. I mean, as you recall, 4 years ago, he wrote a love letter to Hillary, to the cattle trader.
Right.
And everything that he said in the past year has been whether he knew it or not, but by an invisible evil hand, has been things that would sink Trump. He could have announced very early that they were on the track to find a vaccine. He
Right.
held that back the day after the election. He gave an interview that was somewhat positive on the vaccine. The stimulus bill of 5,500 pages could have been passed. Obviously, it's 5,500 pages. They had agreed on 500 different points. So if they had, and on all of these deals, I've noticed that they hold it back. They make it a squeaker. And then at the last minute,
Right.
they reach agreement. And that's what's going to happen on the stimulus bill. But they could have had one for sure before the election. They didn't want to do because it would have helped Trump.
Right. So do you think that maybe Trump just threw a curveball back to them
No.
because Republicans didn't help him win re-election, so now he wants to sink their chances of winning Georgia without being too obvious about it, because he knows that Mitch McConnell cannot pass the $2,000 per person deal. And so they're not going to do anything, and thus lowering their chances of winning Georgia.
I don't think he's that much of a poor loser, and that would certainly.
Well, you were saying that he is, so that's why.
Well, he's a poor sport, and he's known for cheating in every aspect of his business and his sports. I have a friend who refuses to play golf with him because whenever Trump hits a shot, by the time you look to see the ball, it's in the hole. When he hits one in the pond, the ball somehow magically moves from the pond to the hole.
Wow.
And there's a whole book about all his cheating in golf, and his it's pretty damning. But I don't think he would dare to hurt the Republicans' chance. I mean, there'll never be another Republican administration ever again if the Democrats take the Senate.
All right.
The Hunter Biden news was suppressed. That would have enabled the Republicans, would have enabled Trump to win. The vaccine news was suppressed. Brexit news. All the technology firms, as we've spoken, are the only ones that make money. They're able to make money in a economy like this. The ones on the West Coast and the East Coast, and they've done everything they could to suppress all the good news. That Facebook wouldn't carry anything about school closings. If the schools had been opened, the Republicans would have won. There are a million things that happened that are statistically anomalous in the election. Somehow all the battleground states were at 3:30, ordered everybody out, and then they won just enough votes to win those states. I have to believe that was planned. That was according to some total directive from someone. I'm sure my former good friend had his part in doing it. And as I said, it makes you want to throw in the towel. And if we've discussed what will happen. I mean, everybody knows this. We're not adding anything. Everybody knows what will happen if the Democrats win the Senate. We'll have 3 or 4 new states. We'll have the end of the filibuster. We'll have the court being packed. We'll have the right to work laws abolished. We'll have all the states will be bailed out with money. We'll have tremendous runaway inflation. It will be even the billionaires will have to realize that we'll have capital gains taxes increased by 40 to 50%. So I don't see it as being, that will be a very key event. And one of those events is a binary event. It's a Nasa-Metella kind of event. Everything's always bullish in the market, and there's certainly an unaverage amount of worry now as compared to the past 100 years. But I still feel that if the Republicans lose the Georgia Senate vote, and for a cataclysm, from a Nasa-Metella type of event. Of course, he won't make money from it. He never does. But it'll be good to talk about.
Yes.
Okay, what's your thinking? You wanted to ask me something about PEs?
Well, a few things. Speaking of the worry that you have mentioned, there's a tremendous amount of worry in the market now. One of the articles I saw on Seeking Alpha mentioned that the PE ratios are at almost all-time highs in the market. I'm not sure. Can you see the chart on the screen? This guy is comparing trailing PE data from 1954, and he takes the S&P 500 index and divides by that trailing PE data. And
that's part of the ridiculous, epicyclic, wrongful work of Schiller that he won the Nobel Prize for. It's funny that he would win a Nobel Prize for something that was so woke and so completely untrue. The PE must be, better yet, of course, the people who use the PE don't know how to deal with negative earnings. You should use the earnings price ratio. That's pretty much the return on capital that companies are making. That has to be compared with the interest rates.
right.
An annuity of 10% discounted at 5% is worth about 1/5 as much as an annuity of 10% discounted at 1%. 10-year rate still below 1%, and as long as it stays, and it refuses to go down, no matter how much stimulus they do, no matter how much printing, it still stays at 172, refuses to go down.
So do you think the Fed can control the interest rates forever? I mean, given that they have unlimited bond buying capacity, they buy all sorts of bonds, Apple bonds, anything they could find. Could they control?
In Japan, all the central, in all the foreign countries, the central banks are buying stocks.
Right.
The biggest holder of Japanese stocks, by the way, they're
Right.
at 26 thousand, they have to get to an all-time high of 30,000 to achieve. And I think the theory of constructal numbers, the goal of achieving ever increasing highs of Dr. Bijan will carry the Nikkei to 30,000 and will carry the S&P to a new high before the runoff, before the election. But anyway, there's so many things wrong with those PE studies. Schiller,
Right.
I once interviewed Schiller, and he treated me as if I was the non-entity that I was, but he uses, his idea is that you should use a 10-year average of earnings, as if the current earnings have nothing whatsoever are not any more important than the earnings 10 years ago. And he has a lot of series that relate to earnings that weren't reported at the end of the year and that weren't reported at all. So and aside from the fact that he's using 10-year earnings and that he's using interest rates, not using interest rates, he's been bearish since 1964. And it's only no wonder he won the Nobel Prize, because that had to be a way to get the public
To pay attention.
No, it had to get
To
the
his bearish forecast.
yeah, to be bearish, to stop buying and holding, and to keep them out of the market. The only amazing thing is that all the professors who've been receiving an average salary of 100,000, they've all been taking 15% and putting it in CREF, in the TIAA funds.
Right.
And now any professor who's been there for 20, 30 years has a several $1 million nest egg that he's looking at. So they've done very well, as have all the all the Washington employees. I see that Dr. Bricks is planning to retire.
Right. Retire in disgrace.
She's retiring from a country home. We should have asked Andy Aiken about all the money that gets funneled to the head people at CDC. I believe there's some crazy technical aspect where when the pharmaceutical companies pay a royalty or have a patent, they have to give money to people like Dr. Fauci and Dr. Bricks, and that's how they become multimillionaires, and they never have to worry about being fired. Government employee can't be fired.
Right.
And unfortunately, wokeness is contagious, so that President Trump wasn't able to do anything to take away all the 95% of the 4 million government employees who are working to sink him. It makes you cry. It makes you cry. What else?
Well, to bring it back into markets,
Yes.
yesterday we spoke about the charts that you publish daily on the Daily Specs website, the one with the various colorful squares.
Yeah, I see that up now. How do I share that, by the way?
I shared it. It's on the screen.
Okay, you shared it.
Right. So if you want to comment a little bit about it, how does one even begin to understand it?
Well, I think that colors sometimes are a lot easier to find patterns with than the numbers themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And by putting all the colors for corresponding days on top of each other, I think you can find a lot of patterns that you couldn't. You have to, there are 4 different possibilities.
Right.
Red would be a decline in both of them.
Down, right.
Blue would be a rise in the bonds and decline in S&P. Yellow is,
The green is both up, but what do they signify statistically? For example, you mentioned, I think yesterday, that the red day where both bonds and S&P is down is negative for the following week or something like that.
well, it has to be tested and updated, and it keeps changing according to the
Oh, I see.
principle of ever-changing cycles. But in general, if you saw bonds go way down with the stock market holding its own, and when you see the stock market going down and bonds don't go up, I think that's very bearish. But everything has to be tested. Of course, the red days are not bearish for the stock markets the next day. As you would think, they're bearish in the next succession, and that's how you'd have to look at this. You have to look at runs in the colors. One of the most important articles in the stock market was written by Albert Cowles, the founder of the Cowles Institute at Yale, in 1926. And he looked at sequences and reversals. And what I like to look at is how long it's been since we had a red day or a green day,
Mm-hmm.
and what the expectations are after that. Unfortunately, the last day's color is not very significant for the next day as a prediction goes. But runs and sequences and reversals and the last, how long it's been since a color appeared and how they relate to each other on the corresponding days, those are important. So unfortunately, it looks nice. The colors are very interesting, and you can find a lot of pseudo patterns. But aside from the numbers themselves, which you can tell if you ever see a lot of yellow days, that will be very bearish.
When did you say when you see a lot of yellow
If
days?
you see, some yellow, which would,
Mhm.
if you see the stock market going up with bonds going down, but when bonds
Right.
only go down a quarter of a point or a third of a point, as they have every time the stock market's been up, setting a new high. We've gone about 5 days now without the stock market setting a new high. That's extremely, extremely bullish. In terms of this year, when we've gone 5 days without a new high, it's the market and the market and stocks have gone up about 4 or 5% by the time we see the new high, and it's only 3 or 4 days duration until the next new high. So we're in very bullish territory, but I'd be very careful about a decline after we hit the new high and some bearishness at the end of the year. And then we have the crucial event, which will be how Georgia goes. How's Bitcoin been doing lately? It's like 24,000, 23,000. I spoke to my brother today, and he's very happy. He's moved out of New York into Vermont. He just
Nice.
Yeah, he works out 5 or 6 hours a day. He's improving his tennis game. He sits on a tremendous hoard of Bitcoin.
It was down a little bit. It was
What
2,300, I mean 23,000. And you should ask him what he thinks about XRP, because that's has been down significantly over the last, it's probably not refreshed. It's one of the cryptocurrencies that has been down something like 70% or something in the last, basically back unchanged for the year. It's a wild ride. They're being sued by SEC or something like that. And
Which one?
XRP, Ripple, it's on the screen.
I see. Yeah, we should ask Andy Aiken about this. He's
Yeah.
talked to
It's just
person that's
interesting
most
to,
knowledgeable and that's most has the most wisdom of anyone I know about cryptos.
right. It's interesting from the risk management point of view. How do people deal with that when your currency can fall down that much so fast? It's kind of hard to manage. And
Speaking about that, the fact that the dollar is at an all-time low.
right.
I mean, the Fed can continue to buy bonds, and it's certainly dubious as to when inflation will occur. But they can't control the dollar, and the foreigners are. If the dollar has moved from being worth euro dollar worth $1.10, and now it's worth $1.22. So basically the dollar has fallen, and the same thing for the yen. It went from 115 to the dollar. Now it's 102 or so. So as far as the foreigners are concerned, if you had a Swiss bank account,
Right.
you wouldn't be making money because the dollar has fallen 10% and the stock market has gone up 10%. So it's a wash, and I think we'll see more. And the dollar has not. Every day it sets a new low, which is very bullish for the stock market. It's not so bullish if you're a foreigner holding U.S. stocks. Eventually, they'll throw in the towel. What else do you see?
Well, if we get back to politics slightly for a second, it's not surprised, like you said, that science has been politicized for a while. We talk about it here a lot. And
yes.
Right, like for example, Scientific American gave its first ever presidential endorsement to Joe Biden. Scientists never used to get involved in presidential elections, at least so obviously. Not this time with the vaccine, like we said. And there was an article about Wall Street Journal in the Wall Street Journal today that the field of science has been so politicized that I believe it's basically endangering itself. Not only anything controversial is not permitted to be published, ideas that used to be considered common sense are no longer permitted. And for example, to this article in Wall Street Journal, researchers were forced to retract the paper in the prestigious journal Nature Communications because the research was not acceptable to the PC crowd. Not that there was anything wrong with the research, is that the outcome was not politically correct. It was basically a debate over male or female mentorship in science.
Well, that
And-
that illustrates a general principle. When the government is funding so much of science, they start to control it. And anyone who comes up with an idea that's not PC is going to find himself ostracized. He's not going to get government funding, and those who approve of it won't get government funding. So this is why things like the stimulus bill that give thousands of businesses and countries and organizations government money eventually lose their independence.
Right, and it's beyond belief that we needed to even give money for this kind of research paper, which basically was researching whether or not same gender mentorship is better versus different gender. So the common knowledge is that females are better to be mentored by females. And so the article said the opposite is true. And so it got very upsetting to all of the feminists and gender equality promoters. It's absurd. And also, it's just such a waste of time and resources to study this.
Well, everything about climate change is completely
Right.
politicized. If you have anything that talks about the
Right, and another issue was that in another scientific journal, which is also very prestigious, NEMG, there was an article saying that we need to stop putting a baby's biological sex on birth certificates. So it's not just the fringe people who are doing this. Those are very famous doctors. One of them is the former dean of medicine at Brown University. And ironically, his clinical specialty is gynecology. So he thinks that we no longer need to know which gender we are. And at the same time, they're arguing that females need female mentors. So they want to have it both ways. Gender doesn't matter when you don't have it, yet you do when it's convenient to you. It's just absurd on so many levels and so beyond science that I don't know as a society where we're going with all this wasteful research and wasteful energies.
Well, with that thought, there'll be a lot of woke news. I believe we'll see the stock market breaking through the round number on Monday. Only 5 trading days for the end of the year, but there'll be a lot to talk about. Have a good weekend.
You too. And happy holidays.
My regards to all the small number of people who are following our blog. Hopefully, if they like what we have to say, they'll tell their friends to listen in so we can continue this. Thank you very much, Alina. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Victor. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.